I'm presenting to you today Kelly Lundberg.
The thing of understanding your personal brand is you.
Do you ever have a situation where you can see somebody would make a great advocate for a personal brand and they either don't want to or they don't necessarily have the tools?
What are people going to say about me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not knowledgeable enough?
Do you have something to offer?
I can give them the tools. I can give them the strategies. I can personalize it for them. But at the end of the day, they've got to execute it and they've got to show up.
What's your advice to somebody who has a story to tell?
You wish you'd started working on your personal brand 10 years ago.
So what you're saying is actually personal branding, if done correctly with a professional, could advance your career.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Why is having a personal brand important in the real estate sector?
I would say the number one thing is, how do you stand out?
How do you measure that?
So your body language, how you're coming across. Are you always like this? Are you open gestures? Do you have a grumpy face?
How interesting. Welcome to another episode of Taking Care of Business. And this week, I'm joined by a very special guest, somebody I met a couple of years ago and have since been very interested in what she gets up to, how she brands, what she does with her life. In fact, I've just realised that she enjoys opening a glass of bubbles before midday. I'm presenting to you today Kelly Lundberg. Welcome, Kelly, to Taking Care of Business.
Be here. I love it. What
Thank
a
you.
fab, sweet space set up. Very
Well, I
on
noticed
brand.
they turned the AC off for you, which they don't usually. So
Very kind.
Listen, it's good. And of course, happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much.
A special time to be celebrating with you and to talk to you really about what you do best, which is personal branding.
Yeah, a topic I love. I'm so passionate about it.
But I have a question, and we're going to kick off with something really, which I know you think about a lot. When people say, "Oh, I don't have a personal brand," or "How can you start with a personal brand?" your answer is,
You've already got one.
you've already got one.
Yeah,
but what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it's a really good question, and I still do it in pretty much every presentation now where I go, can you give me a show of hands? I love to get people engaged.
Well, that's how I came to know of the comment, the quote, when I met you a couple of years ago.
And it's quite interesting because you get three different responses. So you get a couple of people, and I would say this depends on the audience. So if it's an entrepreneurial audience, you might get sort of 10, 15% that are like, yes, I've got a personal brand. And then you've got the other half, the kind of...
Don't put the hand up.
And then you get this one, which always makes me smile, and it's like they do this dance, and they're like, I have half a brand. It's kind of where they go in that.
So I think that was me. I think when I came to see you at the networking group, I kind of did that like, I don't know. And then when you said, look, everybody has a personal brand. It's just how you elevate it or you talk about it. I was like, why didn't I put my hand straight up? Of course.
And then I think that is probably one of the key considerations when it comes to personal branding is mindset. So if you're thinking, okay, I've got a personal brand, what am I going to do with it? Or how can I get better? The question's slightly different when you go into corporate. So when I go into organizations, I would say one confident person might put their hand up and go, I've got a personal brand.
Okay.
Or do the shaky. The rest will be like, no.
Not cool.
I don't have a brand and I'm not sure I'm going to engage with this yet. Yeah. So it takes a bit of a time to
But do you find that changes as time goes on and by the end of the session people are okay, I want a personal brand?
Yeah. And I think it's just you're giving them confidence, and I think the presentation style is supposed to be fun. I think a lot of people think, oh God, what's this person going to tell us? So they've got this perception of personal brand. You know, is she going to make us dress in clothes we don't want to wear, or is she going to make us post things that we don't want to? And I think that's the thing of understanding your personal brand is you.
Is you.
So you've got to drive it. I mean, I've been hired by companies to work with their senior team. If they don't want to do it, I can give them the tools. I can give them the strategies. I can personalize it for them. But at the end of the day, they've got to execute it and they've got to show up.
So here's the thing. Do you ever have a situation where you can see somebody would make a great advocate for a personal brand and they either don't want to or they don't necessarily have the tools? Do you identify them and go, look, come on, please, like... You could be amazing. Just let me work on you, please.
A lot.
A lot.
And I think a huge piece of that is confidence. So I think there's the element of I just lack confidence. And with the lack of confidence is, what are people going to say about me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not knowledgeable enough? So there's that. Yep. And then you've got the other side of people going, I don't need to. Don't want to do this. I've got to where I am and I don't feel I need to. And it was quite interesting because I listened to a podcast with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
And I think from a personal brand perspective, he really owns that space. I personally find his brand quite shouty, so I'm quite reluctant to sit down and invest an hour. But the topic of the podcast that he was talking about was with his they were all quite high profile friends who'd run really successful businesses. And he said, you think you don't want to think about your personal brand now? But he said, in 10 years time, when you want to do something, philanthropy, you want to give back, you've got something that you're passionate about, you wish you'd started working on your personal brand 10 years ago.
So actually, people should be starting it sooner than what they think.
Well, I think because it's what you do with it. It's that voice and platform that, okay, right now you might be going, do you know what, this is not where I'm going. But in 5 years or 10 years' time, you're like, I'm really passionate about this cause. Or I'm really passionate about, helping the next generation. Or I'm really passionate about going in and working with this charity. If you've got a voice and a platform to be able to do that, that's where your legacy can be to go to the next generation.
So let me say this. When we talk about personal branding, some people can get the heebie-jeebies with it and say, as you said earlier, I don't need it. No, that's not for me. That's not manly. That's not this. That's not the other. Actually, what you've just explained there is you're empowering people. You're giving people confidence. Because I did your quiz last night.
I saw that this morning. I was like, someone's been doing some homework.
I mean, sadly, I only scored 58%.
Still, that's good.
I know, but it's not 90 or 100, is it? But the questions in there, we're talking about, do you feel knowledgeable in your space? Do you have something to offer? Do you feel... I can't remember all of the different questions, but it really made me think, well, I'm knowledgeable about that. And yeah, I do that. And yeah, why don't I talk about that? And it's less about having a graphic designer to create something for you
100%.
And more about being confident on your subject matter and just putting it out there.
Absolutely.
Which is what I find really interesting about you. You speak a lot about the things that you're passionate about. And some of the things I've seen, and I go, yeah, I've seen this one. So I can either engage with it or not engage with it. But what you forget is that some people might see that for the first time.
And that's a really interesting point, I think, especially in the aspect of storytelling. So one of the key, pillars I've really worked on this year is encouraging clients to be able to tell stories better.
Okay.
Give them a framework and understand that piece of being able to emotionally connect with their audience. And I think there's a big piece in that. So I've been to a number of Tony Robbins conferences.
Okay.
I love him. He was what first got me into personal development. It was the first coaching company I ever worked with when I first started my business many years ago. And
Shout out to Tony then.
Yeah.
Huh?
I think I had a bit of a crush on him, to be honest, in my 20s.
You heard it here first?
Yes, between him and Seal. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I was listening to him this morning and I was like, anyway, so
We
moving on.
digress.
Yeah, absolutely. But Tony Robbins always talks about his car, and I slept in my car, and he goes, and I think I've heard that story I don't know how many times, but for other people it's their first time.
Yeah.
And I think you get bored of your own story, or you're like, people have heard this, but every time you tell it, you might tell it in a slightly different way, or it lands with someone in a different space, or they might not have acknowledged it when you told that story this time, but it resonates with them now.
Yeah.
And, for example, through divorce, and I wasn't always talkative about that 6-7 years ago. It was a hard time.
Okay.
But that, when I did speak about it, wouldn't have resonated with someone then, but might resonate with someone now because they are going through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's really, so let me touch on that for a second. And thank you for sharing about, a difficult time that you decided to talk about. But people really engage when the storyteller talks about something which has happened to them personally, or actually opens themselves up and becomes a bit vulnerable, right? But the flip side of that, people don't know how to begin. You have the whole, you've got your tiny violin out. Why are you're telling that story? You feel sorry for yourself. What's your advice to somebody who has a story to tell that, one, maybe doesn't have the confidence to actually draw the story out, but two, and I think in the world that we live in today, people are always concerned about what somebody's going to say about them. So their story that they want to tell, they might, oh no, I won't tell it because I'll get ripped down on social media, or actually I don't want to say that because I'll be embarrassed. What's your advice?
Well, I think it's a really interesting space to be in, because if you look at every single movie we watch, there's always a vulnerability that comes out. Like for example, I saw this recently. Spider-Man, do we really connect with Spider-Man? Not really. Do we connect with Peter Parker? Yes, we do. Because we see the vulnerabilities in how he shows up and how he comes across. And this is the bit when it comes to storytelling, is that any movie, there is that piece where there's the up and the down and the up and the down, and there's always the lesson that's learned. So I think if you're going on and getting your violin out, every week, oh, here's this terrible story, and here's this horrible thing that's happened to me, and here's this, and here's this. Sure, like that then becomes a turn off. But I think there's a time and a place to invest the personal story, and you control the narrative. Because a lot of people think, okay, I'm just not going to say anything. And the other thing is when you say nothing, then people make up stuff. Or they're like, oh, why?
Okay.
Or why are they not saying anything? It's as simple as if I was going to line you up on a blind date. I know your wife might have something to say about that. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, lining you up on a blind date.
Yeah.
You don't know except for who the person's name is.
Okay.
High probability is you're going to Google who that person is. And I asked this.
We've not got there yet, but we're going to Google. Okay.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
I mean, you are who Google says you are. I would never go on a blind date unless I've Googled to see who they are. And I asked this. And time again, in a presentation, the answer that comes out is if nothing comes up, it's like, ooh, they're sketchy. Ooh, what are they hiding? Ooh, what's going on?
Fair.
And they start to not trust. So why would that not be any different if you're looking for promotion? Why would that not be any different if you're looking to go to work for a company, you want to do a little bit of research on who your new boss is and who your team players are going to be, and you can't find anything? Now, sure, there's some people that have got roles and jobs and there requires privacy. Like, this is not what this is about. But
no, but it's quite, how do you keep stuff from going on to Google? And actually, as part of your quiz, it says, do you feature on the first page of Google? And I actually had to Google myself again yesterday. So I was like, maybe all my stories and things have gone. And there I am, page one. So brilliant. If I was going on a blind date or somebody's blind dating me, they can see everything.
Exactly. But then you create a perception. But this is the first place that people go is, not so sure, there's nothing out there. So where's the happy medium? And I've been in events, I've been in workshops where I've heard it time and time again. People go, nope, I'm not doing anything. I want my work to speak for itself. I don't want my boss to see this, or I don't want to talk about this, or I want to be invisible so they see me. And I always think, well, you're doing a disservice, especially women are doing a disservice, because I think...
Why though?
Well, I think...
Because surely the opposite end of the spectrum then is they want to keep their life private, they don't want everything out there, because actually... We will come back to this point in a minute, but some people are very open on social media. I'll use myself as an example, yourself.
Yeah.
I know when you got married. I know where you got married. I have 2 dogs. I'm married. Like, everything's out there for people to see. Some people, they create a different vibe. And some people altogether retract right the way and don't put anything out there.
And so I think then there is that way. So I think maybe it's kind of, there's 2 pieces here, because you've got posting and sharing content online, and then you've got the visibility piece in work as well. Okay. So I think both of those are personal brand elements that you need to consider. That people are saying, forget even putting themselves online. They're going, hey, in the work capacity, I just want to sit in the corner and do a really good job, and I want my boss to notice me, or I want my line manager to notice what I'm doing. But that's not
what you're saying, is that's not really enough.
It doesn't, no, not anymore. Because the problem is there's people that are lesser qualified that are maybe talking about it or communicating or being more visible, and that could be getting the opportunity to speak at events. That could be the opportunity to be on a podcast, whatever it is. And then it's like, hang on a minute, I do that job better than them. Or I'm getting the better results, but hey, no one's seeing you do that.
Because you're not talking about it. Ooh.
So that's
So what you're saying is actually personal branding, if done correctly with a professional's help, you actually could advance your career.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I've seen it time and time again.
Okay.
And I think even from that, people go, is there an ROI in your personal brand? And I'm like, 100%.
Okay, here's the thing though. How do you measure that? Because we talked about ROI off camera, okay? Buying a property, renting it out, etc. Okay, I invest money with a professional.
Yeah.
What's my return?
Oh, so I think there's so many. And I think it depends in where and how you want to look at it.
Okay.
So if I maybe take myself, because I've got all the examples, and then maybe give you a couple of examples of clients that I know have got ROI. So you've got ROI in having a platform and being able to primarily voice things that you are passionate about. So
Okay.
I use my platform to be able to talk about the Sparkle Foundation.
Yep.
My goal is to support children. Like that is one of the things that I'm very passionate about. And I've been to Malawi and I use my platform. There is ROI in that because there is spotlight onto the charity.
Okay, yeah,
So
interesting.
ROI in that space, that they gain sponsorship donations, they gain raffle prizes, they gain auction prizes, visibility, donations, time, all of that. One ROI. Another ROI through the visibility is, being paid. As a
Okay.
more visibility will result in more speaking opportunities, higher fees speaking, more people seeing you, so they want to work with you. So that I think is really crucial if you're a business owner when it comes to the ROI and personal brand as a business owner. The other ROI doesn't always have to be financial. So my wedding in the Seychelles that we had was a barter deal.
I remember you talking about this.
Yeah,
as well.
and you know what? It was as simple as I really wanted to get married in the Seychelles. 5 years before I met my husband, I knew I wanted to go back there. So for me, that was always a dream, and that was very much authentic with the story. So when he did propose, and I said to him, Seychelles is where I want to tie the knot and do the paperwork, and it's just the two of us and not our family. Of course, that didn't go down well.
That's another
podcast. Yeah, absolutely. My mum threatened 4 months to jump out of the bushes. But for that listen, I'm going to post about it. Why can I not add someone else and shine the light on another property if I'm going to be posting about it as well? So contacted a few places. This is what I want to do. Would you be open to it? We're flying in. I'll do all of this coverage for you. And it was a win-win for both.
Wow.
So and there's been kind of lots of examples that I can share like that. So I've got a client who...
Well, I think I heard you talk about a story where you got a trip to the Maldives as well.
Oh, yeah, there's one coming up as well. There's been a couple, actually,
Wow.
of those. Yeah. And even
Okay.
here's another, I'll go share with you another 2 examples of that is, because I touched on my divorce sort of 6-7 years ago. I remember when I had to move out because I made the choice. So I was like, I'm moving out.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I want to live? This is a fresh chance for me to start afresh. And I was like, right, if I was to pick anywhere in Dubai to have a fresh start, I want to live in a hotel. That was my goal.
You wanted to live in a hotel.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And
All
that
right,
was
I
it.
like that.
And I'm a big kind of, okay, how do I make this happen? It's not, I'm going to sit on the sofa and manifest this. It's like, do you know
Or
what?
procrastinate. You're just going to get it done.
Exactly. So I thought, do you know what? If there's one hotel I really want to live in, it's Anantara. And I'm like, how can I make this happen?
You aimed high.
Yeah.
Wow. Anantara on the palm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided, you know what? I think this could be a really good partnership. I knew they had residential. I approached them with a barter, wasn't looking for anything for free. And that's the difference. I think, there's got to be ROI in this as well for brands that work for them as well as yourself. And I positioned a barter deal for 6 months on, said, I'm not coming here to ask for something for free. This is what I'm prepared to do. This is what I'd like in return. They agreed. And it went on for a year. And it was like, okay, you can create this. That's just one example.
So basically, my question of is there a measurable ROI? You basically said, Kameron, don't ask such a stupid question again, because there definitely is.
But to touch on just the employee perspective, one of my clients a number of years ago, I think you maybe seen this in one of my presentations, where she lost her job.
Yes.
And we created a strategy around her personal brand visibility, because what she was lacking was momentum. She was getting rejection letter. And we created a really cool story and post and video around her personal brand, and it went viral.
It got millions of views, right?
4.6.
Yeah, wow.
It's in the book actually. 4.6, and 60 job opportunities kind of came out of that. And what resulted was a job that paid more than the one that she was made redundant from. So when you ask, ROI, visibility, promotion, that's another way to look at it in the corporate space as well.
So basically, there is ROI.
I love it.
From a personal brand. Yes. Now, I like that's in my book comment, because we were going to get to the book next and we'll talk about it. And I'm so pleased because actually you brought me a copy. So thank you very much. And your book basically explores the 7 core elements, of personal branding. Why did you decide to write a book?
I wrote a book in 2009. Okay. And that was my very first book. And it was
I
about,
did not know that.
about entrepreneurship. I was utterly fascinated. I was 3 years in business and utterly fascinated about entrepreneurs in Dubai and just coming here and starting from scratch. It was nothing to do with my industry that I was in. My story wasn't even in it. I just thought it would be really cool. And
But sorry, how do you just wake up one day and go, I think I'm going to write a book? Because even in your quiz, it says, do you have a book? And I'm like, no. I'm reading a book. I've not written one.
I don't know. And it was one of these things. And I mean, I was someone from school where my English teacher told me that I wasn't allowed to study higher English. My mum had to write a letter to the school and say, listen, she's going to study higher English. It's okay if she fails. Just let her do it in the 1 year.
Let her do her
And they
thing.
did. And so this first book came out and it was published when I was 29. So my mum actually took a copy to the school and hand-delivered it to the English teacher. It was really nice. So I think something from that book, I understood that all of a sudden I became an author. There was another hat that I started to wear. I went into schools. I spoke about entrepreneurship and I really loved that. And after 13, 14 years, it's like, right, okay, you're still on the coattails of a book that's not even in print anymore. Like you need something that's
else.
relevant to you. So I actually started initially writing this book maybe about 5 years ago. Some ideas down of what I wanted to do. And then over the course of kind of 5 years, a lot happened. And I got really clear on, okay, this is what this is
What
about,
does this
which
mean?
is personal branding.
Yeah.
And then that for me, I think when you're going into the speaking space as well, where you want to be not just, hey, I'm a speaker and I'm promoting my business. No, I'm a professional speaker. I've been speaking for 12 years. You pay me to speak. I'm not here to promote my business.
Yep.
Having a book is another credibility tool in that personal brand bag that you can have as well.
And I think that's really interesting because a lot of the time, especially somebody starting out with a personal brand, they think, I've got an Instagram, I've got a LinkedIn,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
me,
they do.
I'm posting. And that, I think that's common for a lot of people. What you're saying or what I'm hearing is that you need lots of different elements for you to really elevate a personal brand, right?
And it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big myth that people really think that, once you've set up those platforms, you've got a personal brand. But I always say, your personal brand is like a long-term savings account. And the compound interest is the consistency that you put in over a period of time.
But I think that's what it is genuinely, or
100%.
generally, right? It's consistency.
Yeah.
So many podcasts will fail because they don't get past like the 10th episode, or books probably won't go to print because they don't get finished. Let's touch on personal branding or branding specifically within real estate, because I have operated in the industry for a long, long time. We didn't have social media when I first started in real estate. And you would argue that we were selling homes before real estate, before social media. Why is having a personal brand important in the real estate sector?
I would say the number one thing is, how do you stand out? So I think there's a big piece in, I think you mentioned there was 650 within the team. Okay, so maybe
Employees.
they're not all real estate
Not all
agents. But
brokers,
how many?
but maybe 400-ish.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's just
Allsop and Allsop.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
tens of thousands. Yeah.
Exactly. So how do you stand out? I think that's one of the ways from a visibility perspective. And I think it's then maybe understanding for people what is a personal brand. So the personal brand versus the brand reputation. So the brand reputation is much more built on customer loyalty, the brand values of the company, versus the personal brand is the perception of an individual. It's what do people say when they're not in the room? Oh, I had a great experience with Benjamin. And buying a property. I did. And but why? And what were the things that really worked for him? Would I recommend him as a real estate agent to someone else? 100%. Because it was him. Less about Allsop and Allsop, it was much more about him as a person.
And the brand and the person that he is. Yeah, okay, fine. So would you say that actually it's important for agents to have one?
Oh, yeah. Or
Yes.
to see that they have one, or to understand that they've got one.
Maybe understand in the first place that they do have one.
Yeah.
I guess the reason I'm going down this line is because you see, or I see, being in the industry that I am, I hire a lot of real estate agents, and a lot of the brands that you see are the same. And I don't want to be rude when I say it, but it's a few pictures of a property. It's, hey, my name's Kameron, I work at Allsop and Allsop. And then that's it. Maybe we have a few viewing tours, maybe a few photos, maybe a few pictures of the community. How would somebody elevate that beyond. And what you're saying from earlier on is that actually they need to storytell. The fact that they've moved halfway around the world, the fact that they've had their struggles, the fact that they've driven a Ford Figo when they first arrived and now they're driving a BMW or a Rolls Royce or whatever it is. It's that storytelling.
Yeah, and then bringing that into the stories. You know, I think there's so many things that you could do in terms of, I imagine if I was living in here, this is what I would, you've got to bring your own kind of spin on it. And I think a really good example was, I remember a number of years ago, my mum in Edinburgh was looking for someone to rent a property, and she found someone because of the stories he told through the viewings. And she was like, I've really connected with this guy. And she sent it to me. I'm in Dubai. She's like, I found this guy on Instagram. I think we should reach out to him. Really nice chat. And we still speak.
Rent one of your mum's properties?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's ROI again.
Exactly. And that was through Instagram. And she was like, no, she just did research and she really liked that he told stories and he had a personality and she knew a little bit about him. And then we met him here and it was really
it's
nice.
that whole storytelling thing. And it's getting to know somebody, right? And then buying into the story, maybe.
I want to feel that there's a little bit of a connection. And is there something relatable about you or us or, where does it come together? And at the end of the day, we're human. And personal brands or having a personal brand humanizes
who we
what you do. Yeah, and who you are.
So what's your advice to somebody who wants to start but doesn't know where to?
I think the key thing is, first of all, doing, for example, what you did and seeing where you are.
Okay.
Auditing.
So going on to kellylundberg.com.
Yeah, I'll share the link.
Yeah, please do. And going on and completing that questionnaire.
It takes 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think then it's a place for you to start and going, okay, where is it? Oh, what comes up? I remember being in one company and this guy was like, oh my God, I found all these pictures of, 10 years ago. I need to get rid of them. Things like that.
Yeah.
That's the kind of first place going, is there anything about you? Oh, wow, this comes up about me. Oh, this isn't me anymore. Oh, wow, I haven't updated my LinkedIn in 8 years.
Okay.
Little things like that going, okay, let's find out where we are. And then I would always say understanding what are your personal brand values. So what are you passionate about? You can't go on posting on social media if you don't know who you are, what you like, what you don't like, or you think you might know what you like, what you don't like. But what's important to you? And they may change. So I, in events, I'll share my bio, for example, and I'll get people to read my biography. And I'll go, out of my bio, you pick my personal brand values out of it. And they get it. And they really do get it.
But that's because it's been crafted over a number of years, right? You didn't have that from the word go.
No, but I think then when you start to see how you do it, I also know it a little bit better now going, okay, that's what I would put in. But they get at least 4 of my personal brand values easily out of my biography. So that's kind of then once you understand what your personal brand values are, then you can look at going, okay, well, what am I going to say about me on my LinkedIn bio?
So it's actually getting clear about one, who you are, 2, what you're interested in, 3, what your values are.
Exactly.
And then telling the story from there rather than just thinking, I'm going to create an Instagram page today and post.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that then gives you the space to then have part of the story, to then start to create content pillars and go, well, what is it I'm interested in? So if I talk about sort of my personal brand, one of my number one personal brand values is to inspire to action. And I talk about everywhere, a minimum of 5 people a day to inspire them to action. Not just inspire, because people get inspired all the time. Inspire to actually do something. Whether that is
a minimum of 5 people a day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that could be someone buying a product or service.
Okay.
Could be someone changing their Instagram or their LinkedIn handle or their bio or actually posting. So it could come through social media. It could come through someone listening to this. It could come through my podcast. So I don't actually know. I mean, I could do it on days where I know I get sales in. I could do it on days where I know I'm doing a speaking event. And people say, well, why don't you increase it to 5? And I'm like, well, 5 has a ripple effect. Because
Well, yeah, because then those 5 know 5 more.
Well, yeah, but
versa.
also then I always say your personal brand is ultimately how you make people feel when you come into contact with them. And at an event recently, I always ask at the end, what's one thing you're going to action from today? So I like to know, one, what landed with them. And it's quite interesting because I'm like, oh, I thought that piece of content was much more interesting. Or I thought that piece, but it lands
But isn't it
Definitely.
interesting where you just said that? Because you could post something today which you don't think is very good, and maybe it didn't take you more than 5 minutes to create or whatever, and it blows off.
Oh, they're usually the best.
Aren't they the best? Or they resonate with the most people, whereas
Yeah.
something that you think that you put so much effort and work in, and then you're like, why has it not had any views? Why is there no engagement? Why has nobody commented on it? Because you spent too much time on it, probably.
And overthink
it.
But that ripple effect. So when I asked this group, this one guy said to me, I'm going to working on my storytelling. So great, that was an action. I'm going to create a story bank for the next 7 days. Great, it was a piece of homework that we're doing. And then he said, but I'm also going to stop on the way home and I'm going to go and buy my wife a bouquet of flowers, because he realized that my personal brand starts with me and it's how I make people feel. And I want to make my wife feel loved. And I was like,
My work here is done.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to go and give him a hug, because I was like, this is the best piece of feedback. Because, okay, everything that I'm talking about, personal brand, yes, we're talking about how can it improve your work? How can it help you get more sales into your business if you're a business owner? But ultimately, I believe it's you showing up is the best version you possibly can. That is it.
And then that extends really into sales and service and everything else. And it just envelopes everything nicely together. And actually, I remember reading that story in your weekly newsletter.
Yes, it came out.
Yeah.
That was my most opened newsletter that we ever had. The best
Well,
piece of feedback.
I think what was the tag? It was something
The
like
best
the
piece of
best feedback I ever received. And I was like, I want to know what that is.
Yeah,
Like,
it was, I mean, I think we were nearly 66% open rate on that. It was insane.
Wow.
We normally sit anywhere between 30 to 40, 43%, 45% open rate on our newsletter, and that one was 66.
66%.
Yeah.
Now, what you've basically just explained there is being personal, right? Or making things more personal. I remember you saying on another talk that I attended, going the extra mile with somebody, making sure that you get something for that person, the guest or whatever. I've also heard you comment that you don't like, and I meant to start the podcast with this, but we got waylaid with your birthday, with, hey, Kelly, hope you're well.
Oh, goodness.
And I just want to touch on that for a second, because I think it's super important, especially in a real estate industry in Dubai, where we've already identified there's 10,000 plus real estate agents. So making sure that our employees stand out and our agents are the best versions of themselves that they can be. Why don't you like hope you're well?
Oh, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And it's now actually become a thing on social media where people send me this. And I'm not alone, because it's coming more and more apparent, because there's a lot of memes and stuff going around. So when someone starts an email with, hi, I hope you're well, I actually read that as, I'm really lazy because I couldn't be bothered thinking about what else to ask you. So I've gone with the most generic
Standard.
response. And I've just gone, hi, I hope you're well. And I just go, right, do you know, because what happens, I put this out on social media going, I'm sick of people saying this. Like, if you want to stand out, your personal brand for some people might be email communications the first time you meet them, or a WhatsApp. You know, that is
Just got to stand out.
Yes, and I think, so people came back to me and they're like, yes, but when I send it to people, I really mean it. And I'm like, and what's the difference between you really meaning it and the 10 other people that couldn't be bothered but just were lazy? And people say this to me like, oh yeah, I never know what to say, so I just write, I hope you're well. Why don't you even just say, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Because that then...
That's actually a question.
It's a question.
Yeah.
Did you have a nice weekend? Oh, I saw it was your birthday. I saw you got married. Like, it's the
So I have
tiny
you.
things.
I have you on my shoulder now when I'm writing an email. And I actually did a voice note the other day, and I said, like, hey, Kelly, hope you're well. And then I went, actually, I don't hope you're well. And I was like, no, I can't send that. I'll delete it. And I was like, why am I saying I hope I don't even know this person. Why am I saying I hope they're well? Because it basically means I don't really care. Like, it's an opener. Like, do you really hope they're well? Yeah. So I always have you on my shoulder now, having heard that, where I'm thinking, right, I hope your week has started well. Hope you've had a great weekend.
Or
hope the weather's not treated you too. Like, whatever. Like, just
different.
something. Yeah.
But it's, and I actually went into ChatGPT and I asked them, that question as to why is I hope you're well not a good way to start? And they basically came out with, it's generic. Everyone uses it. It comes across as insincere because everyone uses it. So how does your personal brand stand out by not saying that?
So let's ask you a question, which is, who, aside from yourself, has, in your opinion, a killer brand?
I'm trying to think of people within different industries that people might be aware of to think about. I think people that really own their personal brand, someone that I think maybe people listening to this would go, yeah, I could see this. Take Richard Branson, for example.
Yep.
I think he really owns his personal brand. And when I ask people, you know, what do you think of when you think of Richard Branson? You're like, adventurous, risk-taking, pushing the boundaries, being different, standing out, all those kind of things. And that is very much him. But that is very much, if you think about Virgin Atlantic.
Yes, yeah.
On what are the things that they want to do. So I think there's people that maybe have now personal branding as a terminology. You could kind of really see the clear definition in that as well.
He's a global example, right? Of somebody that's been around for a long time and somebody that you would epitomize with a personal brand.
Yeah.
But who would be a more localized example that you could give? Because you would argue that everybody knows Richard Branson, right? I'm interested to know, who do you think's really killing it in Dubai?
Well, because you're saying just on that point there, I'm going in to speak at schools.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Trying to get personal brands. And I tried the Richard Branson. Yeah, no one knew who he was.
They didn't know who he was?
No.
Wow.
So I was trying to think of people that 16, 17-year-olds in Dubai would know of, and that was way harder. So that got totally lost. And I was like, Virgin Atlantic. And they were like,
who is that? Virgin Mobile?
We only travel Emirates. But sorry, to go back to your question, who do I think is really doing it well here? I think someone who's really owning, from what I can see on a sort of social media front, is probably Huda Beauty.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
I think she's gone through quite a transition in the personal brand journey from, always doing the makeup, always using the filters, to then going, nope, we're filter free. It's no makeup. This is who we authentically are. She's used her platform massively as a voice for the causes that she's interested in, the donations that she does. So I think certainly on a visibility piece, and I know she's lost a lot of followers because of the causes and her opinion, but she stayed true to herself in what she wants to do. So if we're looking at that on a personal brand space that's grown, homegrown here, I think that's a good example.
Okay, I like that one. And actually, do you see that that's a common thing for brands or personal brands to pivot? You may start out as something, and then you pivot into something which either you resonate with or you become interested in.
I think we evolve so much, and I think that was a big reason why I started a new Instagram page.
Yeah, why did you?
Because I had this personal brand visibility piece on Instagram for kind of 10, might have been 12 years at the time. And I was stuck on 50,000. Like, I was originally verified, so I was not paying to be verified at the time. It was
you were an OG
one of the original,
blue ticker.
the original one. And do you know what? It just wasn't growing. And I was like, why? And it was for a year. And I was putting out, good content, was out shadow bans, it was just stagnant. So I did it as a test, to be honest. I thought it would be a great case study for the book to go, is Instagram pushing smaller accounts, newer accounts? Have I confused my audience?
Okay.
And so many people were like, oh, you're so brave. And I'm like, it's an Instagram account. I know it is my work and my brand.
No, but it is. When you say that, it is quite brave, because if you've got 50,000 followers and then all of a sudden you're starting again, I had a brief look, I think 5,000 now.
Yeah.
But that's organic from only 1 year, right? No paid followers.
No, none. No paid, no bots. I think that was the thing. There was, so many strategies to build an Instagram account, when it first came out, and you would get, I remember in the days when you would get likes of like 1,500, 2,000, 3,000.
But that just doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't. And I think that, and also, that you were part of, what are these called? These groups where you liked each other's posts, and then there's bots and old accounts. And
like for a like. And,
and all of
follow
those these kind of things you did like 10 years ago. And I thought, you know what? This is a chance to test it. Am I, what would you call it? Walking the talk? Like telling my clients.
Yeah. Are you practicing what you preach, but leading by example?
Because I'm going, well, you can do this on Instagram. And I'm sitting there with my 50,000 to my OG blue tick. No, I'm going to start again. Because if I...
And actually prove it.
Yeah, to myself, but also to know that what I'm sharing with my clients on their strategy. Hey, I'm not a social media specialist, but as a personal brand strategist, I've got experience in social media. I've got experience in speaking. I've got experience in the media to support someone through a strategy. And if I'm not coming from a place of vulnerability, learning, growth, then how can you help?
Your genuine self. Yeah. So you used a word a moment ago, which I want to touch back on, and it's we evolve. And I've seen that through your career. We did a little bit of research, as we should do when we have a guest coming on, and seeing how you've personally evolved, but also seeing how the landscape of social media has evolved. You just said then, like for like, people were like wanting lots of likes. I was on the tube back in London over the summer, and the amount of people that I saw just like engaging, as in visually engaging with the post, but then they would scroll. Yeah. And I came a point where my wife and I would like get on the tube and be like, right, you watch that way, I'll watch that way. And people would just be like, they're not engaging with it. They're not liking, they're not sharing, they're not commenting. They're clearly watching it.
Yeah.
And so the argument would be, how do you know if some of your content is being successful? Because the way people use social media now is different to how they used to use it years ago. Would you agree?
Oh, massively. And I think there's the reach. It's not about the likes, it's the engagement. How are you communicating? And I think the relationship that you have. And I think there's a huge shift in, I don't know if companies are fully on board with, they still perceive the volume. And I think there's so much more reach in accounts that have got 5, accounts that have got 10, 15, if we're looking at Instagram. But I think there's a massive growth coming in LinkedIn and LinkedIn followers. Or LinkedIn influencers.
LinkedIn influencers for sure. And we touched on this off camera, right? Where I said that a lot of people will still say, oh, LinkedIn's a professional platform. You shouldn't be talking about your Well, hang on a minute. If I'm working 80 hours a week, I want my followers on LinkedIn and my clients, my colleagues to know that I have a family at home and I do go on holiday and I do have aspirations and goals myself. If you're not sharing those things on LinkedIn and you're just saying, hi, we're hiring, it's boring, right? Like, I think you should tell a story on LinkedIn. But you talk about a change. Did you receive an email from LinkedIn recently that said, we'd like to promote some video content? And they're really pushing video.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I listened to another podcast of a LinkedIn specialist, and I thought this was quite interesting. What LinkedIn have seen has been a regurgitation. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of
I hope.
Yeah. You know where we're going with that. ChatGPT. So what people are doing is, here's a picture, and I've just gone on to ChatGPT or any of the other AI platforms and asked them to create the content and put this on. So from what I understood.
But you see that, Kelly.
Oh.
And you'll see it, I'm sure.
I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled. So announce. Excited. I'm so happy to have just joined. Are you joking? And the photos are all standard photos with some standard caption, which you're never going to read. And it's true, actually. I feel like we should do a reverse ChatGPT on these posts and call people out. Yeah. Just put ChatGPT in the comments.
So this is where I think they're trying to push video content for authenticity. Because then you're starting to get people that, they might have had some help with their content, but it's also their delivery style. And this is the piece where it comes with personal brand, is that your personal brand, we've talked about your brand values. What we haven't touched on, we've touched on storytelling, social media, but style. So people automatically assume when, especially coming from a fashion background and style, people go, oh, it's what you wear. But I always break style into the 3 V's. So you've got visual style, which is what you wear. You've got vocal style, which I think is so underestimated, but will have a much bigger impact on your career, potentially, than what you wear. And then you've got nonverbal, so your body language, how you're coming across. Are you always like this? Are you open gestures? Do you have a grumpy face?
How interesting. Like the fact that they're all things that, you're like, okay, sure, I know that. But until you actually say it, you probably don't think it.
No.
Because you think, I've got to wear the outfit. Yeah. Not thinking you've got a face like a smacked ass and you're not speaking properly.
So there's the perspective of, someone can dress the part. So I could take you out. You always look impeccable, by the way.
Thanks.
But
so
take you out, look the part, and then you come into this podcast and you go, Hi Kelly, great to have you. And everyone's like, oh my God, we do not trust this person.
What's happening?
Or they don't sound very confident, or I'm not, your personal brand is a trust accelerator. You can lose it as soon as you open your mouth because you don't sound confident. And that doesn't mean you have to be shouting and, hey, everyone, look at me. It's not about that. But I go into this, there's 5 foundations through Vim. I worked on his course and 5 key foundations to vocal styling, which are as important as to how you dress.
Well, I hadn't really ever considered that. But actually, in an industry where we buy with our eyes, it's real estate, right? The first thing you're going to do is look at the house. You're instantly turned on, or you're not. But actually, if you're trying to sell that property, how you come across, how you dress, how you're showing the property, rather than just wandering around and going, yeah, this is the lounge, this is the kitchen. Actually, the style that you have when you're showing that person the property won't necessarily determine whether they do or do not buy it, but they probably will buy from you if that property's not right because they like your style.
Absolutely. And that's a really...
It's not enough just to turn up to look the part then. You've got to go beyond that.
Absolutely.
So what's next for Kelly? Because you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a personal brand strategist, you were ex-cabin crew, you worked at Next for a period of time.
Oh, you really have gone through my
deep.
LinkedIn.
I have. So what's next for you?
It's a great question. Do you know, and it's funny that on ex-cabin crew, and I'm actually going to test it. One of the things I really want to do next year is I'd really like to go back to Emirates and come full circle and do something with Emirates, interestingly.
Love that.
So I'm going to go and ask my platform of 13,000 on LinkedIn to go who's got a connection and go into that. So that's a side note, given you brought it back, because I just feel that there's something in this. Can we tell a full story and go back? I think it inspires people to do that. So that's a side.
I actually do agree though, because we've got many people that work for us as real estate brokers and then have gone on to do other roles within Allsop and Allsop that started off life as cabin crew. They came to Dubai to investigate Dubai and have gone on to do something else. So I think Emirates should be quite proud, really.
I agree.
Of all of the great people that they brought over.
And to attract people into the role in that space of going, hey, the reality, I'm sure they've got the stats, I don't know how long it is, but someone stays within a role for it. But it doesn't tend to be a lifetime career of you're going to be doing this for the next 30 years.
No.
So you know that people are inevitably going to leave. So that's a side note in there.
Well, Emirates, if you're listening.
Yeah, exactly.
She wants to do something.
Do it. And you know what? If this works, I'm going to test it out on my LinkedIn. I've never asked my LinkedIn for anything. I've never asked my connections for anything.
Why? Because you just said then 13,000.
Yeah,
I thought you'd have had more than that.
Yeah, it's grown by, was it 20, 30% this morning?
But did you start your LinkedIn again? Or did you start a LinkedIn for the first time?
No, I've had my LinkedIn account for a really long time. I've only
just not used it.
No. So I would say I only really started using it in the past 2 years, 3 years maybe, but I've only massively invested in it in the last 12 to 18 months.
But I have to say, sorry, because we're going on a side note here, LinkedIn for me gets a bad rep. Or, well, in my industry gets a bad rep because you'll post a job and hundreds of people will apply that are not suitable for the role. But actually asking your LinkedIn network for something, I do it quite a lot. If I'm asking for recommendations for a role, or I asked, I think the other day for a kitchen renovator.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, and I got it. Yeah. So you never know, but I think it gets a bad rep. But try it.
I'll see. So that was just one of the side things in terms of what I wanted to do. And build the speaking career. So I think we've got here, but US, I've just got representation for a speaking agency in the US to get speaking opportunities, and look at the UK. And I think the UK is going to be quite an interesting market because they're definitely more reluctant. That's a generalization. I appreciate that.
But I would agree.
But in terms of sort of personalities and why would we want to do that? So I think that will test me in that
But do you think
space.
because there's more of a tear down mentality in the UK?
Yeah, massively.
The press,
Yeah.
It's not particularly pleasant if you are in the public eye. Yeah. Whereas here, we just live in like a nice little microcosm, right? It's just nice.
I think everyone has kind of been in that new space. They want to support people. There is much more of that, how can I help you, versus why would we want to help you? There's not everyone, by the way, not everyone, but I do find that I think it would be quite an interesting dynamic in how people take personal branding there versus going into the States where everyone's like, yes, I'm a personal, there's such a diversity in how people are coming across in that space. So I'd like to explore that a little bit more.
But that's interesting because that's actually, cultures generally across the world are very different. How they communicate is very different. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Culture Map, which actually, if you're thinking of doing what you're doing, you should definitely give it a read. But actually how people present their personal brand in the UK versus the US versus the UAE versus Japan, all very different. So not that you're not already, but you're going global. Well, Kelly's going global.
I like it. And I think the big piece, for next year, one of the things that I'd love to work on is my podcast, which is interesting saying work on it when I've got 140 episodes. Yeah,
I noticed there was a lot. And actually, again, I noticed on your weekly mail out, you said you've got plenty of content.
There's a lot.
I've not been invited yet.
No, but I was just sitting here thinking you could be a great guest on it next time. So we'll speak about that. But we spoke off camera about something that Stephen Bartlett said to his team. And I think it's something that stayed with me because I'd mentioned that Holly had come and spoken at one of our mastermind groups. Is he always says, what can we do better? How can we do this better? And I think in order to keep growing as a person, to keep evolving in a business, to keep things fresh, you've got to keep asking yourself, how can I do this better? Or what can I do that's going to make this better or different? And I would really like to look at my podcast and go, how can I really invest some time into this to make it better? And I would like it to become the podcast that when people visit Dubai, I have the demographics here, but when they visit Dubai, they go, I want to be on Kelly's podcast. I want to be on the Kelly Lundberg show. That's what I would like to create.
Isn't it interesting what you just said there, though? The Kelly Lundberg show. So many times it's podcast. And there's so many podcasts. It's a flooded market, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Having a show that you want everybody to be on, I like it.
And it's less about, oh, I want it for me. I want them to shine the light on them. Everything's about how can I help someone's personal brand so that they can get more clients.
But ultimately it's what you explained earlier on. It's the ripple effect. It's not necessarily for you personally because you want to be famous. It's because you're helping people do something that you're passionate about.
Love it. I absolutely love it. So that would be my thing for 2025.
And maybe another book?
Oh, no, I think 2 weddings, a book, starting a new business with Tash, and everything else. So no, I those are the things I think I'd like to work on next year.
And for those people who are interested in purchasing and reading DC the Lemon, where can they get it?
So it's on Amazon,
okay,
depending on where people are listening.
Yep.
And finally, it's been stocked in McGrudy's.
It is.
Supporting local authors, which I'm really happy
Congrats.
about. Thank you. That was a tough one to get it in there, being self-published and the regulations you have to go through now in order to get some sort of permission here, and you need to be registered. Anyway, I've got it done.
But the fact is you did it.
Finally.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Well, Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking because I'm thinking that we've been talking for a long time. Do we have more time? Do we have less time? Should we wrap up? Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure.